Well, it's been mentioned on your show 4,000 times. And
really, when did I say that?
On your
I
show,
said whites are being replaced?
You have said that before.
Really?
Yeah.
I would challenge you to cite that, because I'm pretty sure I haven't said that. I said native-born Americans are being replaced, including blacks.
Native-born Americans.
Native-born Americans.
And
Americans black Americans have been, African Americans have been in the United States for, in many cases, their families over 400 years. And their concerns are every bit as real and valid and alive to me as the concerns of white people whose families have been there 400 years. So I've never said that whites are being replaced.
Tucker Carlson absolutely embarrassed some journalists when they tried to corner him and call him racist. And Russell Brand is reacting to the whole thing. And he's reacting in a way that I didn't fully expect. I thought he would fully agree with Tucker Carlson, but it looks like Russell Brand actually disagrees with Tucker Carlson on this quite a bit and might actually think there is an element to racism to this whole thing. Let's get into this clip here of Russell Brand talking about Tucker Carlson, who was talking about the white replacement theory to these journalists and absolutely ripping them to shreds. This one's coming from the Russell Brand YouTube channel and says, watch journalists try to embarrass Tucker Carlson and it backfire spectacularly. Let's check this out.
As usual, the arguments that are presented is that the right is racist. Now, I'm not down with the old racism. I'm very, very pro-community. I'm very pro people coming together and being in total control of their own communities and, in a sense, having no opinion on how people outside of my own community want to organize and formulate their own. It's very interesting to see how the charge of racism is deployed. One of the things before I knew Tucker Carlson that I'd heard about him was that he was racist. And often what I was given as evidence of that fact was that he was a proponent and a disseminator of what is known as replacement theory, the idea that immigrants are brought in to replace, inverted commas, white Americans. I'd heard that a lot of times. Now, an Australian journalist took that claim to Tucker Carlson, where he's performing live at the moment, and look at his response. I think it's pretty cool. Let me know what you think in the chat, guys.
Thanks, Tucker. One final question from the press gallery. Kat Wong from AAP.
Hi, Tucker. Thank you so much for your address today. So you talked a little bit about immigration, and in the past you've talked about how white Australians, Americans, Europeans are being replaced by non-white immigrants in what is often referred to as the Great Replacement Theory. This is the same...
Have I said that whites are being replaced?
Well...
I don't think...
Look how long she holds on to the idea. It's brilliant.
I don't think I said that.
Well, it's been mentioned on your show 4,000 times. And
really, when did I say that?
On your show.
I said whites are being replaced?
You have said that before.
Really?
Yeah.
I would challenge you to cite that, because I'm pretty sure I haven't said that. I said native-born Americans are being replaced, including blacks.
Native-born Americans.
Native-born Americans.
And
Americans black Americans have been, African Americans have been in the United States for, in many cases, their families over 400 years. And their concerns are every bit as real and valid and alive to me as the concerns of white people whose families have been there 400 years. So I've never said that whites are being replaced.
You know what's crazy? He can explain this. Tucker Carlson can explain this as many times as he wants, as many ways as he wants. He can dumb it down as much as possible. And it literally doesn't matter, because no matter how many times he explains himself, no matter how many times Tucker Carlson goes on a stage and destroys an Australian reporter in a different way, explaining why he's not just talking about white people getting replaced, he's still going to be called racist for this exact statement that he is saying he never said and he doesn't agree with. And he's still going to get called racist for this, because it doesn't matter what you say. It only matters what the left and the mainstream media says that you say in order to fit their agenda. And people who dislike Tucker Carlson because he's on the right, they're just going to run with it. It doesn't matter how many times he explains himself. This is just what they have decided Tucker Carlson thinks and what they have decided that Tucker Carlson has said. And it doesn't matter what he actually says. It just matters what they decided.
Not one time, and you can't cite it.
Untrue.
So we just met, but when our relationship starts with a lie, it makes it tough to be friends. So
you've been lying
let's
about
pull
my
that back. I'm
press
happy to explain what I do think.
So,
well, you actually can't cite it because I didn't say it, and I don't believe it, and I'm telling you that to your face. So why don't you just accept me at face value? My concern is that the people who are born in the country are the main responsibility of its leaders, and as noted earlier, when those leaders shift their concern from the people whose responsibility it is to take care of to people around the world, to put their priorities above that of their own citizens, that's immoral. And they are being replaced in my country, people who are born in the United States, and the birth rate tells the whole story.
Interesting. Also, if someone says they're not racist, if someone doesn't believe in racism, isn't trying to implement racism, isn't advocating for racism, but is in fact saying that if you have a nation and your political systems are built around the sustenance of a nation, the management of a nation, then there's a few things you have to investigate. What kind of global powers are able to influence it? I'm talking about corporate powers and bureaucratic powers, philanthropic organizations, lobbying organizations. What kind of...
If you enjoy content like this, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out a ton. Let's get back to the video.
Projects is that nation involved in that are not good for that nation? Like wars would be a good and clear example. And how does that nation protect its borders or manage the size of its population in order that the taxes derived from the population are able to be spent in accordance with the will of the people? Now, there are a lot of issues, and personally, I question how high, when someone says, like, the reason that you can't get a doctor's appointment or the reason you can't get housing is as a result of population explosion, I'm sure that that is a factor. But I would also say that there are financial factors that are beyond the remit of a strata of the population that have little power and are much more the province of extremely powerful financial elites that are, for example, when you take that kind of quite colloquial example that people would use, like a couple of generations ago, a person, usually a man, would be a carpenter and would be able to support a wife that didn't work and 3 or 4 kids. And now the idea that one person in a working job could support a family, a man or a woman or whoever, it's ridiculous and risible. Now, that's not solely because of immigration, is it? That's because of, I would say, there have been
a lot of different things, of course. And this is why I like Russell Brand, man, because he's able to see through, like, I know I keep saying this, but it needs to be said. So many people out there are saying the easy talking points. They're saying the easy stuff like, oh, we need to stop giving foreign aid to these countries because we need to focus on what's happening in America. And it's like, yeah, you're right. But the problems that you view as problems in America, the elites who are really running things don't view as problems. They view them as solutions. So the immigration problem, the inflation problem, the crime problem, all these things, they're not viewed as problems to the people who are running things. So even if we stop giving money to foreign entities, we are not going to put that money into solving these problems because they are not viewed as problems to the elites. Russell Brand and Tucker Carlson, but they cut through the nonsense and they're like, who is really doing this? What is the real agenda behind this? And that's why I love Russell Brand's commentary so much, is because he's just cutting through the nonsense and he's saying what everybody needs to be talking about. Not the easy talking points like all these other commentators do, like Ben Shapiro and Daily Wire. Well, I guess Ben Shapiro never says that, but like Matt Walsh and these guys are like, just stop giving foreign aid to these countries and all the problems will be solved. It's like, no, it's not going to happen, dude. If we stop giving all this money to these foreign countries, what are we going to put that money towards? Probably getting more trans generals in the military or something. It's not going to be solving immigration. It's not going to be solving crime, solving inflation. That's not problems. Those are solutions to the elites. So shout out to Russell Brand for actually calling this out.
Extraordinary financial fluctuations and maneuvers that I'm really not equipped to fully articulate how inflation works and how property prices work. But what I do know is that groups like BlackRock and Vanguard do make moves to acquire and manipulate property prices. What I do know is that the 2008 crash ultimately benefited the financial industry. I do know there was a massive wealth transfer during the pandemic period. So ultimately a time and period that was deleterious and traumatic for the majority of people was advantageous for elites. We can't continue to bring you.
That's what people need to be talking about right there. Not all those easy talking points where stop giving foreign aid and solve the border crisis, solve immigration, solve crime. It's like, yeah, we obviously want to solve those things, but the elites don't. The people who can really call the shots don't. And that's why we need people like Russell Brand and Tucker Carlson out there who are willing to say what we need to, like, I don't want to say what everybody's thinking, because everybody has been brainwashed to think the problem is just foreign aid and solving immigration. And I agree. Stop giving money to literally anyone else except for Americans. Stop using American tax dollars to fund wars that we have nothing to do with, or at least shouldn't have anything to do with. Stop sending it to the Middle East. Stop sending it to Ukraine. Stop all of this nonsense and solve the problems within the country. I agree. That is a very common sense take, but it's also a very low level thinking take, because like I said, the people who are really calling these shots, who are deciding where this money is spent, they don't view the problems that you view as problems. And that's why we need people like Russell Brand to call it the nonsense. But I do, do you guys think that even if Tucker Carlson said what everybody's claiming that he said, and that white people are being replaced, because that might not be the case in America, right? If Tucker Carlson is talking about Americans, he's talking about natural born Americans need to be the number one priority of its leaders. And I agree. And that's definitely not all white people. That's America is like a melting pot of so many different cultures and races and everything like that. But in certain places in Europe and a lot of places around the world, it is primarily white countries that are being, invaded by illegal immigrants and that are non-white. I just wonder in the comments, would that make it racist if there was a white replacement thing happening in a certain country and you called it out? Because to me, I love Russell Brand, but it seems like if that was the case, like if America happened to be an all white or primarily white country, which I guess it is still predominantly white, but there's a lot of different races that are naturally born American. If it was mostly white, let's say 95% white, it seems like Russell Brand would take that as a racist thing. That's just my read on, maybe that's completely wrong. That's just my read on this thing. Would you also take that as a racist thing? Or do you just think it's the truth? Because in my opinion, it's just the truth. And I don't have a problem with any other race or anything, but it's just calling out that there's a country being invaded that's predominantly white, and then the people who are coming in aren't white. It's pretty obvious that white people in the country are being replaced. That's just what's happening. It's not like you're not even saying it's good or bad. Obviously, in this case, Tucker Carlson is saying that it's bad, but that's just what's happening, in my opinion. But it seems like Russell Brand kind of would think that that is a racist thought. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking about this whole Russell Brand and Tucker Carlson situation.